You're listening to the Angry Marks Podcast Network.
You're listening to the Undisputed Wrestling Show with your hosts, the Prophet, Rick Craig, the Bearded Wonder, Zane Paisley, and the Morning Star, William Huckabee.
The Undisputed Wrestling Show is back, brought to you by www.AngryMarks.com, the Angry Marks Podcast Network, specializing in professional wrestling and mixed martial arts podcasts. This week we've got an outstanding show, as we always do, but coming up next week we've got Kurgan going to be joining us in the house, and then in the following week the NWA president himself, Bruce Tharp, will be joining us. Before we get started, let's get together with the partners in crime of the evening, none other than Zane Paisley and Will Huckabee. Zane, how are you?
I'm doing very well. I would like to send a tribute out for this show. 5 years ago today, my stepfather, Mike Lumpkin, passed away. And 3 years ago today, my wife's maid of honor, Christy Gerstorff, passed away. So I'm thinking about some of my fallen friends and family today.
Understandable. Morning Star Will Huckabee, the NWA Continental Champion. Will, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing really good, man. Really excited about today's show. I got a feeling once again we're going to have another good one, man.
Well, we're always going to have a good one, Will. You know that.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll be talking a little bit later in the show. Yes, your prophet, your beloved pro wrestling visionary was at Raw last night in person. We'll go into further discussion about that at a later time in the evening. However, let's get this thing started. We've got a former ECW World Television Champion, a TNA X Division Champion, a WWE Cruiserweight Champion in the house. We've got none other than Kid Kash. How's it going, Mr. Kash?
It's great. How are you?
No, we're not doing too bad at all. Like,
great.
You know, when you look at your career and how it has shaped and where you've gone with your direction, a lot of people aren't familiar that you have competed in MMA, but your father was actually into boxing and stuff at a young age. Did you really get into the boxing arena too at an early age?
Yeah, I started actually boxing at the age of 7. Started training with my father at that age, and I did a lot of like little YMCA Pee-wee tournaments and stuff like that back in the day, and then I wound up started taking Aikido from a neighbor of mine who was so my father was in the Navy. He was a Navy SEAL, and then later on in life we had a neighbor move in beside us that was also a former Navy SEAL who was actually a world Kempo champion and Aikido champion. So I boxed a couple of days a week with my father, and then jumped over the fence and did Aikido a couple of days a week with my neighbor.
So what kept you, I guess, from, you know, in your younger days, kept you from getting into the MMA field at that time? What got you into professional wrestling instead?
Well, I actually was a pro fighter at the age of 17. And I traveled around doing tournaments, Aikido tournaments, Jiu-Jitsu tournaments, Pan American Games, Naga, you know, stuff like that. And then out of high school, when I got my pro card and everything like that, I fought, you know, overseas in, you know, Europe, Iceland, New Zealand, Australia, places like that. Some up in Canada. Met the Rock and Roll Express back in Japan, very early, late 80s, early 90s. And come to find out, we didn't really live far apart from each other. And at that time, you know, I'm 45. So, you know, we're talking about a long, long time ago. You know, MMA didn't make the money that it makes now. I mean, you want to fight, you might win the top prize of about $5,000, you know, but then you only fought probably, you know, 5-6 times a year, you know.
Right.
So that didn't really add up. Wrestling, you know, it was athletic, and I was athletic, and it just kind of fit, and the money was a lot more abundant than what the MMA was, you know. So I wanted to do something for a living. I didn't want to have to work a 40-hour a week job, so I wanted to be an athlete. The MMA was my first original dream. But, back then, like I said, MMA wasn't near as popular as it is now,
So when you hooked up with Ricky Morton, was wrestling new to you, or was that something you have always followed and always been a big fan of since a child, or how'd that go for you?
Oh yeah, I always watched it. I grew up watching it back to the real NWA. I grew up on it. The NWA of today, and there's no disrespect to anybody, but it's not real. It's an independent wrestling show. That's it. Back then when NWA was real, that's whenever the world champion made $10,000 on every event that he did. You know what I'm saying? Ricky Morton was the world tag team champions. I know for a fact the money that they made back in the day, and it was prestigious then. You got a bunch of guys around the country, with this franchise NWA thing. And, it's just not, to me, it's no better than, an independent wrestling show, but back then that's what I grew up on. Wahoo McDaniels, who wound up being my very first match ever.
Oh, wow.
Ivan Koloff, Ricky Morton, Robert Gibson, Ric Flair, Ronnie Garvin. I grew up watching those guys and stuff. I was a fan of it. I never really thought of doing it, but it just kind of fell in my lap.
Very cool. I'm going to kick it on over to the bearded wonder himself, Zane Paisley. Zane Paisley, Kid Kash here on the Undisputed Wrestling Show.
Hello.
Well, Mr. Kash, thank you so much for coming on our show tonight. And I got to let you know that my 8-year-old son's first name is Kash. Unfortunately, I did not name him after you. I named him after Johnny Cash. Are you any relationship to Johnny Cash?
Actually, yes, a distant relation, yes.
Well, that's amazing. I hold him in very high esteem. And I was doing a little Facebook stalking of you today, and I saw your interest in music, and I saw a lot of rap, which really surprised me. But I did not see any Kid Rock or any Johnny Cash on there.
Well, just because I'm a distant family member doesn't mean I listen to country music. I grew up, heavy metal, industrial metal, Scandinavian metal, very hard rock. That's what I was always into. My very first album was Ozzy Osbourne, if that tells you anything. And that's back whenever they made albums.
Well, I think it's you need to talk with a guy up in the Northeast named Grey Wolf. He's into Scandinavian heavy metal too, so I think you guys would have a lot to talk about. So you teamed up with Ricky Morton for a short time, and then you got some exposure through ECW. Can you tell us about starting off there?
Well, originally I met Rob Van Dam many years ago in North Carolina when he lived out that way. Greg Price used to run shows, and we just happened to meet, and we both were instantly, just getting along. We had a lot of interest together and stuff. My style and his style was a lot alike and stuff, and he was already in the ECW, and for months he was always telling me, he was like, man, you need to come to ECW. And up until that time, I'd never really heard of ECW. I just, I was just basically still trying to get my name out there and stuff, outside. That's when I left Ricky and Robert. I wanted to make it out on my own kind of thing, So one night, it used to come on really late in Tennessee here, and it would come on like 1 o'clock in the morning. I had just gotten back from a show in North Carolina, and I drove all the way back to Tennessee, and I sat down, turned it on, and ECW came on. I think it was on the Fox Sports Network or something, FSN or something way back then, and Fox Sports South, yeah. And I was watching it, and I was like, oh, this is what Rob's been talking about, and I was watching it, and I was like, well, shit, I can do that. I do that every night, So I just happened to, I always knew, Rob stayed up very late, and I think I remember him telling me he had to be in Philadelphia that, the very next night. So I called him up, And he was like, oh, so you're watching it? And I was like, yeah. And I was like, dude, I can do all of that. And he was like, that's what I'm telling you. He goes, man, he goes, you need to come to Philadelphia. And I'm like, when? He goes, tomorrow. And I'm like, are you serious? He goes, if you can come to Philadelphia, he goes, I guarantee you everybody will already know who you are and you will get a match. At least get a dark match or something. And I was like, all right. So, my girlfriend at the time, we talked it over, and 2 hours later, I got in the car and drove to Philadelphia at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I met him the very next morning and hung out with him and a bunch of guys I already knew from Smoky Mountain days, knew Jack and Mustafa and guys like that. And went to the building, and he walked up to me, and he says, like, hey, somebody wants to meet you. So I walked around the corner, and Paul Heyman was standing there, and he was like, back then my name was David Jericho. I don't know if anybody knew that, but he was like, David Jericho, how are you? And I was like, I'm fine, how are you? And he goes, great. He goes, how's Ricky Morton? I was like, he's Ricky's Ricky. So we both started laughing, and he goes, did you bring your gear? And I was like, yeah. And he goes, good, you're all in 20 minutes. And that was it.
That's
Started
fast.
from there, went out, had a match, got a huge pop. People already knew who I was because back then I still kind of wore the Rock and Roll Express look,
Uh-huh.
And Tommy Dreamer was like, people aren't going to know who you are, so don't feel bad if they boo the shit out of you. Just go out there and do your job. I've seen your work. You're really good, so you'll fit really well. But as soon as I walked out, the people started chanting rock and roll. So it all kind of turned out really good, and had a six-way tag match, and I got some really nice high spots in there, some hurricanranas and stuff, and just impressed Paul and everybody. And went to the back, and I was like, what'd you think? He goes, I loved it. And I was like, when you want me back? And he goes, you got a job here. Come back next week. I'm like, all right. And that's how it started.
Go ahead, sir.
No, that was it. That's how it all started.
Well, how did you get the Kid Kash look then? Obviously, it was patterned off of Kid Rock. Were you a fan of Kid Rock, or did somebody suggest it to you? How did that all happen?
No, I actually didn't even really know who Kid Rock was. We were tumbling around with the names and stuff. Chris Jericho started getting like really big. I actually had the name started David Jericho back in 1990. So, I already had the name. Chris came in on the scene. Him and Lance Storm were a tag team. And so he came back from Japan and went to ECW. And right before I got there, he left. And so they didn't want to, confuse the name and everything. So we came up, I don't know if you guys remember this, but they came up with all kinds of different names for like Davey Morton, Tyler Jericho. Then we did Davey Morton first. And then, Paul was like, you're a different breed than Ricky. We don't want to do that, I had a son, his name's Tyler. So we started calling myself Davey Tyler. And then, Sandman's kid, his name was Tyler. He started becoming a part of the show. So then we changed it again. So then I got into a tag team with Little Guido, Nunzio. So then they started calling me Davey Paisano. And so that didn't work too well. And next thing you know, one night they started calling me Davey Morton Tyler Jericho. And that we just kind of kept that for a while. And then just one night, I think we were in Poughkeepsie, New York, and I showed up for work. We're sitting there chatting and stuff with the other guys, and Tommy Dreamer walks by, and he goes, hello, Davey Morton, Tyler Jericho, how are you? And I was like, good. And we talked for a few minutes, and he goes to walk off, and as he walks off, he stops. He goes, oh, by the way, you're no longer Davey Morton, Tyler Jericho. And I was like, I'm not? And he goes, nope. He goes, you're now Kid Kash. I was like, okay.
That's simple.
Yeah. But come to find out, it was because Joey Styles and Paul were editing with Tommy, one of the shows. And at the end of the video, the TV popped on, and Kid Rock was like playing that song Cowboy.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess Paul thought we looked a lot alike, because I had the long hair back then and stuff. And a lot of people have made mention that I look like Kid Rock and stuff, you know, so that's kind of how I heard it happened.
This is the Undisputed Wrestling Show. We're talking to TNA, WWE, ECW, WCW veteran. Kid Kash is in the house. We're going to kick it over to the NWA Continental Champion, the Morning Star Will Huckabee, to get the wrestler's perspective.
Hey, Mr. Kash, how you doing today?
Great, how are you?
I'm doing all right. Now, I'd like to take it back and ask you a couple questions. You know, from before you went to ECW and stuff, when you first got into the business. First of all, you know, you broke in still what they like to call the kayfabe era, where guys were still about protecting the business. Coming from an MMA background and stuff, did any guys ever give you any heat for coming from MMA to professional wrestling, or do you feel that people respected you more because you were considered a quote-unquote shooter?
I got a little bit of both, honestly. Some guys didn't want no part of me, and then at first, you know, it was kind of hard to transition from the real to the fake, you know. So there was a lot of times I was like really hammering people, and I didn't even realize I was, you know. And then sometimes my juices would start really flowing, and every now and then I'd throw a real serious sugar hold on somebody and not even realize what I was doing, you know. So it actually took me a couple of years to get out of it, you know, to learn how to pull it and stuff like that. So, yeah, I mean, some guys didn't like me because of it, you know, because I was just working stuff, and then a lot of guys respected that and actually, you know, showed me a lot of respect because of it.
That's good to hear. Now, my next question is because, you know, you hear a lot of times and from a lot of different guys from the South about, you know, living in the South and working in the South and then having to go up north to Philly, New York, or whatever. And the majority of guys really hate that experience. Not just, you know, working for ECW, but just being up there in Philadelphia, coming from Tennessee, being a country boy and stuff. How was that experience for you? Did you really like being up there in Philadelphia?
Yeah. I mean, I had no problem with anything. Honestly, I was just happy to be there. And I just did what I did. I tried to be different from everybody else. When I did watch the show that one night, I noticed that at that time, it was almost kind of like wrestling in Japan and Mexico. Nobody sold anything, you know. So I wanted to be a little different. I just took my roots and took it with me, you know, and I mixed it with the more up-to-date style at that time of the high flying and the extreme type wrestling, you know. But I sold everything along the way. And to be honest with you, it actually caught on. We were in, I can't remember the town, Schenectady. Yeah, we were in Schenectady, and I was wrestling Mike Awesome, who had just literally got off the airplane from Japan. And we had a match, and I sold everything, and he wasn't used to that because he was used to, you know, knocking the hell out of people, and as soon as he turned around, he was getting drop kicked in the back of the head, you know. So on our lockup, he kicked me, and I sold that thing like I was going to the electric chair, you know, because he was like 6'9" and 300-some pounds, and here I am 5 foot, you know, 5'9.5", 10, and about 200 pounds, and you know, it didn't make sense for me to just bend over and turn, you know, and try to compete with him at that point, you know. So I just, you know, sold every single thing that he gave me, and it almost kind of threw him off at first. And I sold so well that when I went into the back, Brian Lee, an old friend of mine, was ready to kick his ass because he thought that he was beating my ass out there. Well, I was so convincing about it that the very next night, Raven kind of took over the dressing room with the younger guys like Nova and Chetty and Doreen and Roadkill and all of those guys. And from that moment on, for a period of time, they made them have selling classes. They would make them sit there and watch old UWF, AWA, NWA, Mid-South, all these continental wrestling, and watch how everybody sold. And that's whenever it kind of changed. So, that company actually, because of me, that one night, they started taking, more of a direct, road to selling instead of just extreme everything,
That's really good. And speaking about the guys backstage, a lot of people might not think so, but I definitely think so. You've had such a great career in professional wrestling. Starting off at ECW though, and we've all heard the stories about the culture of ECW in that locker room. How did you avoid all the pitfalls that a lot of your contemporaries had, as far as the alcohol and the partying and the drugs? How were you able to stay away from that, especially being very young in the business?
I didn't. I did everything they did. I was just more responsible about it.
Oh!
I mean, if you want the truth, I'm not going to lie to you. I don't know too many wrestlers in that era who didn't do drugs and drink and party and stuff. That was the good time era, we played hard and we played even harder afterwards, but it just depended on who was more responsible. I knew I had to get up and, catch a flight back home, and early in the morning. So, I was able enough to, cut myself off and know when to say when a lot of the guys didn't know. Of course, you got to understand. I came into business to the Rock and Roll Express, two legendary parties. So, at the age of 19, I'm on the road with the Rock and Roll Express, bro. So there wasn't a night for years that we didn't party in a bar or, do some sort of a drug after the show was over with, But, but back then you had to, and almost in a way, just to keep your sanity, really, because we stayed on the road literally for 2, sometimes 3 weeks at a time before we came home. We would get in that car and we would drive from one end of the country to the other, man. I remember times leaving Johnson City, Tennessee and not coming back for 2 weeks, sometimes 3. We'd make it all the way out to Texas, Oklahoma, a couple of times out to California, up to Canada, Indiana, Michigan. We were literally all over the place, booked solid. And, you do all that driving, you do, by the time you get out of a show and stuff, of course, Ricky and them, they want to go have a beer somewhere, so you got to have something to get you up and then you got to have something to bring you down, But like I said, I was that, a lot more responsible about it because I thought about my body a lot more than, most of the guys did. Even though I partied, I still went to the gym every day. I still ran every day. I still, did my training and stuff and sweated it out, But it only lasted probably about 6 or 7 years, and then it just kind of became old to me. And then I just pretty much quit completely,
This is the Undisputed Wrestling Show on the Angry Marks Network, and we were talking to one of the, in my opinion, one of the most underrated wrestlers of the last 15 years, Kid Kash. As we spoke to you before we went on the air, Zane and myself are both from Indianapolis, and we have somebody in our chat room who's wanting to ask you this question, and we were there this night. So Zane and I've got a little bit of background being there. They want to know, ask Kash what it was like in the locker room the night Mike Awesome dropped the ECW title to Taz in Indianapolis.
It was, just like people were just more worried that he was going to shit on the title because that's what WCW was wanting him to do. But he did the right thing and he did good business in the end. But he only walked right straight through the door, straight to the ring, did the match, lost the belt, walked straight out the door, right into a car, right to the airport. That's how it all went down.
Now, was Doug Dillinger there from WCW to escort him?
No, Doug Dillinger wasn't. There was a couple of security guys, I guess, from WCW, but it wasn't anything, the crowd knew more about it than the boys did, believe it or not. We didn't know what was going on.
It probably made a bigger deal about it too, right?
Yeah, but I mean, the only big deal that even went on, it was, we were just worried that, he was going to take the belt on TV and shit on it, and drop it in the trash can, but he didn't, and he did the right thing, and, he wound up doing good business in the end, so, and, thank God Taz came back, he was in the WWE at the time, so, and then it actually helped, ECW, if you think about it, because Taz took the belt to WWE with him,
Right. When
got us a lot more exposure at that point,
in ECW, a lot of times they obviously got more involved with hardcore matches and things like that. Did you enjoy any of that, or is that something you'd rather not be a part of?
I never did. I don't know the hardcore. I did hardcore extreme. I did extreme wrestling. I didn't do the hardcore matches. I mean, of course, I took a lot of chair shots. Don't get me wrong, and I went through a lot of tables, but I didn't do any of the barbed wire and the light bulbs and all that other crap. To me, that's not wrestling at all. And what kills me the most is, I came in the actual traditional way, of respect of the business and honor and loving the actual sport itself. And then, after the ECW went out, every single, independent wrestling organization in the country was trying their damnedest to be extreme and all that. And it was just so ridiculous. The one thing that set ECW apart is they knew how to make it look good. And trust me when I tell you this, I've been to many, many independent shows where they just could not, for the life of them, make it look halfway, not even halfway decent, And then they got hooked on it, and there's guys out there still to this day that only do hardcore matches. They don't wrestle at all. Like, what's that fucker's name? Ian Rotten. Horrible. Look what he's done to himself. All of these years, he's been scratched himself up, cut himself up. If you ever watch him walk across the dressing room, he looks like a 90-year-old man. He looks absolutely atrocious with all the scars all over his body and stuff like that. I'm sorry. I think a lot more myself, than to name myself that way, And to me, I feel much better knowing that I can actually go out there and pop the crowd by using an arm lock or wrist lock or a hip toss or an arm drag than having to bust light bulbs over my head or, go through barbed wire.
When you end up leaving ECW after the promotion went under and went to WCW, you obviously had just a little cup of coffee there. You were in the very dying days of WCW. Could you talk a little bit about what the experience was like for you there and what you felt like the atmosphere was like? Did it feel like death, or what did it feel like?
No, it felt nobody, not one person in that building knew what was coming up. Honestly, not one person. I signed a contract. I was there. Let's see. I was in that company, probably about 3 months, but I did I showed up, did some dark matches, wrestled Easy Money a few times. But I didn't sign my contract until late because we negotiated. They offered me a contract and it wasn't what I was looking for. So I kind of let my lawyer check it out, my agent, and Jimmy Hart kind of took me under his wing at that point and kind of negotiated for me and stuff like that. So he got me a pretty good deal. And about the time I signed it, 2 weeks later, that's whenever the whole buyout happened, So they called me up one day and they was like, hey, don't come to Panama City. Just send it home. We'll get back with you. We got some shit going down and, we'll get right back to you. I'm like, all right. Well, the deal I signed was pretty good. I was very satisfied with it, and, they called me back and John Laurinaitis was like, hey, that contract is null and void. We have, WWE already has a company. We don't need everybody, but we want to keep you and a few other guys. So what we're going to do is renegotiate your contract. You're going to go to Cincinnati until further notice. And I was sitting there thinking about it, and I was like, well, when am I going to get on TV? And they were like, well, you know how that goes. It can be 1 week. It could be a year. You never know. Just be satisfied you're with them and let's go. And so I talked to Jimmy about it, talked to a couple of other people about it, and we just decided to turn that offer down. And that's about the time I went to his organization, the XWF, and
Right.
I signed a 2-year deal with those guys, but it was through the Home Shopping Network. So we did a total of 8 shows, but I still got paid for 2 years. So it didn't really matter. Yeah.
That's a pretty good deal.
And, yeah. And even the last year, I was getting paid twice because they were not only paying me, but I was also, had just gone to work for the brand new TNA, So I did, I think 3 years with TNA, and that little deal didn't work out too well. And then, I wound up going to WWE, of course, and then coming back out into the TNA again.
Well, you bring up TNA, and you know what? You were talking about every wrestling organization has to have some particular niche that they're known for. Like ECW was for extreme or hardcore matches, and you were saying how independent companies emulated them. Well, you know what? WCW and WWF at the time wanted a piece of that pie too. Didn't work out great for either one of them. But, TNA kind of brought back what WCW was known for, and that was the cruiserweight division. That seemed like a perfect resting spot for Kid Kash. Why didn't that work out for you the first time around?
Oh, well, it worked out for 3 years. I mean, I was there for 3 years.
Right.
They were just a brand new company, and what they were trying to do, this company had guys in the office that had never even been in an office. They had old WCW writers, not story writers, but play-by-play writers. Jeremy Borash, Bob Ryder, those guys that were behind the curtain, writing play-by-play on the internet, they wound up being bookers in the TNA, So, I mean, if that tells you anything, you can't take somebody who's never been a booker or never been a wrestler, and have them help run a company, So what they were trying to do is build this brand new brand, which was a great idea, and the X Division was a great idea. I mean, truth be told, the X Division is what actually started that company and got it off the ground and got people watching. It wasn't the heavyweights. It damn sure wasn't, But, they just, I was already an established star and stuff, so the writing on the wall started coming through there after a while. They were taking people like guys had never even been heard of, like AJ Styles and Chris Daniels and Kazarian and guys like that, who had never been in the mainstream, they were putting those guys out there and pushing those guys because they were fresh and new and stuff. And then they started trying to use guys like me who were already established to make stars out of them,
Right.
And, after a while, I was just not cool with that, especially whenever I found out the pay scale on it, I was like, wait a minute, this is not what we talked about. And then, we had talked about, like every year, we'll start out with this because I know that you're new. I know that you're trying to get off the ground. So I'm willing to work with you. But at the end of this year and from here on out, this has to happen. We have to advance that pay, and, that happened once, but it wasn't like nearly as much as what we had discussed earlier. And then come to find out all of these guys that I were, laying my back down on the mat for and, giving my body to and stuff like that were making 3 times the amount as me. And they hadn't even, been anywhere yet. That was their first company. That was their first bit of stardom, So, I mean, you take a guy who's already established and, that kind of like leaves a bad taste in your mouth,
I guess if you had to do some comparing, I mean, every promotion has got their own way of doing things and different ways of promoting and pushing particular stars and wrestlers. How do you compare working with the Jarretts and working with Paul?
How do I compare? It's not even close. Paul made you feel like you wanted to rule the world, He made you feel like you would break your back and every bone in your body for ECW, and he did a great job of it because in the end, a lot of us wasn't not myself. Okay. So I was always paid. I never had a bad check. I never, didn't get paid in the ECW. I don't know what happened with some of those guys, what their deals were and everything. In the end, it got pretty bad with the payments for some of those guys. I remember being in that dressing room and a lot of guys were mad as hell when we walked in the door. But by the time he did that pre-show speech, everybody was like raging maniacs ready to go out there and just tear the house down.
Man can motivate, that's for sure.
And, the dressing room itself was such a joy to be in. I mean, there was competition, but everybody was brothers. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
We went out there and we tried to outdo each other, but there was no hard feelings about it if we did outdo each other. Everybody was really working as a team and on the same page. TNA wasn't really like that. A lot of, I don't know, spot hogs, that kind of stuff. People going out there not thinking of the match, not thinking of the company, thinking of more of getting themselves over, but whenever they wrestled guys like me who were established and a veteran and already knew how to, control a match, they didn't like it very much because I wouldn't do what they wanted to do. You're going to wrestle my match, So it was a little pull and tug there at first, but after a while, you smack some people around and stiff some people and stretch some people. They kind of go your way after a while.
Let's kick it back over to the man of 1,000 beards, Zane Paisley.
Well, once again, thank you so much, Kid Kash, for being on our show. Before I ask my next question, can you let our listeners know how they can follow your career and follow what's going on with you through social media or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I got Facebook, David Kash. I'm on Twitter. I have KidKash.com. I'm pretty much out there. Wikipedia, you name it. It's pretty much out there.
Okay. So from TNA, you had some troubling times at the end there with the pay scale, like you just mentioned. You ended up going over to WWE. Can you tell us what that experience was like starting off with them? Did they contact you? Did you contact some friends that you had there? How did you get hooked up there?
Well, what happened with that is that I was having problems with the TNA, and Tommy Dreamer had started helping John Laurinaitis book talent and stuff like that. And he and I had a conversation, and I told him, about how unhappy I was there and stuff like that. And he was like, well, we're about to start the light heavyweight division.
Hey, time out a second, Kid Kash. Can you, if you do Laurinaitis, can you at least do the voice?
Do what?
Said if you're going to talk Laurinaitis, can you at least do his voice for us?
Oh, you want me to do hey kid, what the fuck? Are you serious? Do I got to tell Vince that you're just a stupid motherfucker? What? Yeah. I got that one down. I heard that voice enough.
I'm sure you
do
have.
it in my sleep. Yeah. But
continue. I'm sorry for interrupting you.
Yeah, he was helping John book, and I had talked to him about how unhappy I was, and he was like, "Well, if you get a release, we're about to kick in the light heavyweight division again." And I'm like, "All right." So I basically went to TNA and just acted like a complete asshole until somebody fired me. Because I tried to get a release for the longest time, and they just wouldn't release me. They were like, "We need you. You're the only guy in the X division that can, knows how to get people over, including yourself." They were just really trying to use me up as much as they could. I just wasn't going to have it anymore. So I just was doing anything and everything. I was getting guys in the ring and just absolutely, shooting on them. A few times, they wanted me to put guys over and I wouldn't, I quit showing up at shows and stuff like that. So finally I did a stranglehold radio show with a friend of mine, and I just basically buried them. So one next morning I got a phone call from Jerry Jarrett, and he said, hey kid, you still want that release? And I was like, yeah, either that or a raise, one or the other. He goes, well, good, you got it 10 minutes ago. And I'm like, great. I was like, good, send me the hard copy ASAP and fax it to me first, and then ship the other one to me by mail. That's the way it goes, So he was really cool about it because he knew how unhappy I was, and he had already at that point started losing control himself. Dixie and the family came in and just was overruling a lot of his decisions and stuff like that. So he was pretty much unhappy, at that point himself. So I got the fax release, and I called Tommy, and I was like, hey, I got it. And he was like, can you prove it? And I was like, yeah. So I faxed it to him. He goes, I need the hard copy. And I'm like, well, it's on its way. It should be here by tomorrow. He's like, all right. He said, let me get back with you. And about 2 hours later, John Laurinaitis called. Hey, kid, it's John Laurinaitis. Listen, we understand you got to release. Is this legal? Are you done? Are you really done? And I'm like, yeah, I'm really done. I faxed you the release. Well, I need hard copy. Well, it's coming tomorrow. All right. I'm going to get back to you. All right. And I'm like, okay. So a couple hours later, he calls me back and told me to check my fax machine, and they sent me a contract. And I signed it and sent it in and started working for WWE the same day. I got released from TNA.
Before you quit the other one. So you went on to win the Cruiserweight Championship there, and then you, after that was over, you teamed with Jamie Noble and you did a Pitbulls gimmick. Did you talk to the ECW Pitbulls about that? Was there any heat between you guys?
There was at first. I didn't talk to him about it. I honestly had no way of contacting him at that point. He was, I guess, writing the office and calling the office, sending in, cease and desist and stuff like that with the name. Evidently, Paul, when WWE bought the company, he sold the names and rights to it and everything. I actually had like a little bit of a deal because I copyrighted. As soon as they called me Kid Cash, the very same week that I went home, I copyrighted it.
In ECW, at that time, you copyrighted it.
Yes, as soon as Tommy Dreamer told me that my name is now Kid Cash and stuff like that, and I went straight home because they finally gave me like an identity. You know what I'm saying? Plus, my real name is Cash anyway.
Right.
So I just went. Yeah. At first, I did the poor man's patent. Wrote myself a letter, mailed it to myself, kind of thing.
Sealed envelope.
And it works. It's very legal. It's extremely legal, so it worked for a little bit, but then I wound up going and actually getting it copyrighted to the government and stuff, paid the money. So, whenever the royalties came in, we were like, hey, I own my name. No, you don't. Paul sold it to us. No, I own it. Here it is, kind of the same thing, the little deal with Paul. So, the Pitbull thing, evidently he didn't know that, Gary Wolf owned the name, So there was a little discrepancy there, and I think we did it for like a year, and then just one day we were actually leading up to I think the No Way Out pay-per-view maybe. I don't know if it was a No Way. It was going to be the next one after No Way Out. They pretty much told us that we came to work, and it was like, you guys are no longer the Pitbulls. We're gonna still tag team you, but we're going to work out something, another name or whatever. We don't know yet. So we tagged that night. We went back to Cash Noble, and the very next week they broke us up. So
did you watch Raw last night?
I don't watch wrestling. I haven't watched wrestling in years, man. So.
Jamie Noble was in the main event last night, so I didn't know if you had an opportunity to see that. So.
No, I'm not.
My question for you, there's a show on WWE Network called Legends House where they get 7 or 8 guys together and film a reality show. I don't know if you're familiar with that at all, but in all your extensive career, who would be a few guys that you would like to do that type of show with?
What that's in the WWE?
Well, no, anybody that you've worked with over the years, who do you think would be fun to live with for a month or two and do a reality show with?
Well, there's a couple guys. Jamie, he's a riot, so he would be interesting. He would be the entertainment to keep everybody going. Ricky, of course. Ricky is, he's entertaining as well. Lance Hoyt, my old partner. Rob Van Dam, Sabu. I think that would make for a really good TV show.
Yes, it would. Zane, let's kick it over to the Morning Star, Will Huckabee. We are the Undisputed Wrestling Show. We're talking to Kid Kash. What do you got, Will? We got a few questions left from you, if we could.
Oh, yeah. Cash, I was going to ask you because, you're very well known in the independent scene. When you returned to TNA, and you realized you were able to not only work for TNA, but on your days off, take some bookings on independent companies, what's your opinion about that? Do you like that setup, or do you disagree with it?
What, working indies while you're signed with a company?
Yes, sir.
Oh, I don't have a problem with it. I mean, see, there's a big, huge difference, though. You got to understand. When you work for the WWE or WCW and even back then the ECW, your contracts, you didn't have to work for any other company. They paid you, and they paid you very well. TNA, their pay scale wasn't really that great, so basically that's why they had you they allowed you to work indies, and which worked for me because I just jacked my rate right on up. I made whatever I made with TNA is what I charged to do indies. So, it all kind of averaged out as financially. I never really got into this business because I loved the sport. I got into it because it was going to be a financially, my better decision, between that or MMA or going to work 40 hours a week, So anytime I've always been a businessman about it. I've never been a mark for, I love being a wrestler, or never been a mark for, oh my God, I work for the WWE or anything. Yeah, sure, it was great working for the WWE because that's every job you do, you want to make it to the top, right? Well, WWE is the absolute top. You can't go any farther than the WWE. So once you make it to that level, everybody strives to get there. Well, yeah, of course I strive to get there, but it wasn't because it was the aura of the WWE. I wanted to make that money that everybody was making. And I did, because when you put together the contract money and then you put together the merchandise money, man, you make a great living, an amazing living. And then whenever you have to make anything less than that, like right now, it's like, my retirement is coming up this year. It's just wrestling has changed so much that, with companies like TNA who allow people to go out there, these young kids to do these indies. Well, these young kids are killing our business because they go out here, wrestle for TNA, and then they go charge $250 to wrestle an indie show, So then whenever the promoter calls you, hey, you want to come wrestle for us? I'm like, yeah, sure. This is what I charge. And they're like, oh, shoot, man, I can get this guy over here for this much. And I'm like, well, you better book his ass then, because I damn sure I'm not going to do it, And so the boys are killing themselves off. They're working for so cheap that it makes it hard for guys like me to continue to make a living in it,
I was going to ask you, when you go to these indie shows and stuff, how do you feel that the work style, in your opinion, as far as wrestling, how has that changed since you first got into the business? And do you like it or not, coming from an MMA background?
How do I like the style of today?
Yeah, because nowadays a lot of guys like to consider themselves doing the Japanese strong style as a much stiffer style than back in the day where guys were trying to protect each other. So, coming from an MMA background, do you like it? Do you not like it? What's your opinion on it?
It don't matter to me because, if you've ever seen me work, I work stiff anyway. When you wrestle me, you've been in a match with me. I'm going to chop the living fuck out of you. I'm going to kick you hard. I'm going to, forearm you hard. I'm not going to directly punch you square in the face, but forearms, chops, kicks, stuff like that, you're going to feel them. I just don't believe in pulling shit because it takes away from the essence of the match and it makes it not believable to the crowd, you know. When I watch these indie shows, every indie show that I've ever been on, this is no shit. I mean, there's only been a handful of people in the past 20, coming up on 23 years that has actually impressed me enough, you know, to actually want to wrestle them, you know. Everybody else, if I got in the ring with them, I pretty much just eat their asses up, you know, because, you know, they're out here pulling shit so bad, slapping their chest with a punch, slapping their leg, you know, and all this other stuff. I just don't do that. You know, I'm more of a realist. If you're in the street and you see two guys fighting and a guy throws a punch, is he going to slap his chest? No, he's not. You know, if you see a guy throw a side kick or just any kind of a kick, do they slap their leg in the street? No. Do you see that? You know, do you see that shit on MMA? Do you see it in the UFC? No, you don't. You know, so I just don't understand some of these guys, man. In the strong style, I've wrestled a couple of these kids out here. They thought they were wrestling strong style until they wrestled me. You know? I'm like, okay, well, it kind of offends me actually, to be honest with you, when a white boy comes out here thinking he's Japanese and going to be wrestling strong style, and he's never even been to fucking Japan. You know? That's what pisses me off. It kind of makes me mad, you know, because you're not being real. You know, you're just a complete fake in my eyes. You know, don't try to emulate a style. Make your own. You have to stand out. You have to stand out, or you're not going to make it in the big time, or you're just going to be that other guy. And that's what these kids don't understand. These kids don't get it. You know, they're like, with my training school here in Nashville, let me tell you something. If any of my guys come to the school and they have a match, you know, because I make them do like quick 5-minute matches and stuff. I've actually had kids, you know, get out there watching their Japanese tapes, and then they come to class the next day and they want to play that strong style shit. I stop the match right there. I get in the ring and I show them what strong style is. I'll put an elbow right up inside their damn nose and like, okay, now, you know, you didn't like that too much, did you? Well, guess what? You're not in fucking Japan. All right. Now wrestle American. Wrestle the way you're supposed to fucking wrestle. Your eyes aren't slanted. Your skin isn't olive. Okay. Wrestle real wrestling. You know, if you want to wrestle strong style, then get your ass booked in Japan.
This is the Undisputed Wrestling Show. We're wrapping it up with Kid Kash, who's been gracious enough to give us his time. Got 3 real quick questions for you, Mr. Kash, and then we'll call it an evening with you. Any plans at all for any more MMA action from you?
Yeah, well, I train every day, regardless. I have some stuff coming up at about the middle of the first year, around March and April. I don't fight near as much as I used to. I try to pick my fights now. You know, I'm kind of in my 40s now, you know, so I still do it for the competition, just to make myself feel like I'm still got it, you know. So I pick usually about 2 fights a year. I just had 1 fight back last March, so I'm looking at another one probably March or April this coming year. As far as wrestling goes, I'm pretty much retiring pretty much at the end of the new year coming up, this year coming up.
Oh, wow. What did you, I was going to ask you what you thought of the recent announcement from TNA that Destination America would be the new destination for Impact Wrestling. Or have you even heard it or given it any thought?
Can you say that one more time? Destination
Sure.
America?
Yeah, Destination America is going to be the new home for Impact Wrestling as Spike is out of here after the end of this year.
Well, what's Destination America? I never even heard of it.
What they used to be called, guys? They had a different name, didn't they?
I just know that they're part of the Discovery networks, but they're
part of the Discovery channels. I think they get maybe a third of what Spike TV was going to get as far as audience.
Man, there's no disrespect to that company, man, but that company, I don't know. They've been holding on by a leg. They just, you know, Dixie and those guys better be so blessed that her dad's a billionaire. 'Cause I can tell you for a fact, and this is the truth, in the since the company's been open, they have not profited one dime at the end of every year. Not one. They've always had to pay out. They've never once made $1 on that.
Wow.
You know, and that's why they've had so many problems in the last couple of years, because, the spending and stuff, and, the dad, the father, I guess the company, Panda Energy, put them on a budget. And with that budget, bills weren't getting paid and people weren't getting paid. And that's the reason why I left last time. And, and the many years I've been in this business, and the companies that I've worked for, and the titles that I've held, and the things that I've done, I'm not such a mark for this business that I'm going to work for a company and not get paid. I'm just not going to do it, And like I said, there's
Nor should
no
you.
disrespect. No, well, you wouldn't believe the guys that have been hanging on in that company just so they can be on TV, and it's sad that they're that, some of those guys are that big of marks for this business that they would rather take a loss, like that. And, I just can't do it. I have an 18-year-old daughter and a 20-year-old son, I've had a family to raise, I've got responsibilities. I'm a grown man, and I can't live that way, So that company is, God love them. I mean, I'm very impressed that they're still trying to kick it in and still trying to do it, but I just don't know, man. I mean, their ratings were so bad, on Spike. What happened? They dropped them, I think, while I was there, Disney even dropped them a few times, but they kind of pulled it back out to stay in the park, It's just, I don't know. But if you watch their matches and, watch how the company's being booked and the storylines, I mean, you can see why it's a fledgling company. It just, I don't know. Some good guys work there, and it's a shame because they damn sure don't know. That's the one problem I had with them. Their best talent has always been sitting in that dressing room waiting on a spot, while their mediocre talent is the ones that are being pushed. I never got it. I never understood it. Samoa Joe, guys like that should be pushed to Samoa Joe, and guys like that should be pushed to the moon. Hernandez, I wrestled Hernandez, 100 times in that company my last go there, and I cannot, for the life of me, figure out why they never at least tried to put the heavyweight title on that cat.
We talked to him a few weeks ago, Cash, and it's just amazing that they even let him go. It was just ridiculous.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, and you'll hire Matt Hardy over somebody like him. I mean, no disrespect to Matt, I'm just saying you're going to hire Matt Hardy over Hernandez, who's given you his all, who's given you his, life for how many years now. And the man has had some great matches, and he could have had better matches, but you wouldn't let him. You wouldn't give them to him, I don't know if you guys remember a couple of times him and I had some pay-per-view matches together. And let me tell you something, man, that cat can go for as big as he is. I was very impressed with that man. Samoa Joe, I don't understand why they don't push him harder. I cannot believe that they didn't try to keep AJ Styles, but yet they'll keep people like Chris Daniels. I don't understand. I just don't get it. Yeah, but it's not for me, I guess, to say yay or nay. I mean, it's their company; they can do what they want, But if they ever have a question of why they're having such a hard time, only thing they have to do is pull out the tapes and watch them. To be honest with you. Hello?
Well, I'm not sure where Rick is.
Yeah, I'm here.
Kid Cash, thank you so much for being on tonight. You said that you're coming up to the end of your wrestling career. Do you have any shows booked before, so our listeners can see you before you officially retire?
I'm booking stuff throughout the beginning of the year. I've actually have been turning bookings down lately, just because I've been concentrating on other things and stuff like that. But I started taking some more. We're working things out through, I think, March on up through like July. I've already got some stuff coming up in like the Virginia area, the Maryland area stuff. Nothing set in stone right yet. Got possibly another little England tour, and then we'll probably be wrapping it up at the end of the year.
I think speaking from a lot of wrestling fans who know you still have a lot more that you could offer if you chose to. I mean, it's going to be a sad day to see you go. I wasn't expecting this announcement tonight. But let me throw this out at you, Kid Kash. If Jeff Jarrett came calling and said, Kid Kash, I need you on Global Force Wrestling, would you consider it?
Well, of course, I've never had a problem with Jeff. It wasn't Jeff's, deal with whenever him and I, when I was with TNA, it was people overriding him, that stepped in and just out of nowhere because they owned more shares in that company than he did, But yeah, I mean, I have no problem with Jeff. I thought Jeff was always a really good dude and everything like that. So yeah, I mean, I could, at this point, I could still wrestle or possibly even do some agent work for him,
Final question, then we'll let you go for the night. We are definitely on overtime with Kid Kash, and we appreciate you being gracious enough to give us so much time this evening. I am older than you, Kid Kash, so before you beat me up when I say this, when are you going to get to the point where you're Uncle Kash or even Grandpa Kash? You can't be a kid forever, right?
Well, I've actually dropped the kids within the last year. I pretty much go as David Kid Kash or just David Kash. That's what I have people call me out as,
So I tell you what,
I actually tried to drop it this last go around with TNA.
Oh, did you?
But yeah, I didn't want to use it. I didn't want to be Kid Kash. I wanted to be just, either David Kash or just call me Kash. I mean, pretty much everybody that knows me or that I'm friends with or even I deal with just calls me flat out Kash. So when I went back to TNA this last time, I discussed it with the office about just dropping the name completely and calling myself Kash or something like that. And they were like, no, you're a heel. That's the heat. That's the heat right there. And I'm like, okay. So I can tell that,
okay.
I can tell your philosophy has changed over the years. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Kash, we definitely appreciate you hanging with us tonight. You graciously gave us a lot of your time, and it was a great honor and a pleasure speaking with you. And hopefully everything will work out real well for you. And if you do retire, enjoy it. If we see you in the ring again, which I hope we do, keep bringing it, brother. You've always done a great job.
We'll keep watching the internet. I got, like I said, I got a couple of MMA shows to do coming up this new year, and then I'm going to try to work some stuff out. Maybe you never know. You might see me back on TNA briefly just to do a retirement match. So
very cool.
Talking to her, yeah.
Hopefully we can talk to you again. Maybe we'll get to talk to you about that.
Absolutely, man.
All right, Kid Kash, thank you so much. Have a great evening, bud.
Bye, buddy. Take care.
Kid Kash joining us tonight. Like I said, went overtime with Mr. Kash. He was very gracious to give us an hour and 15 minutes of his time, so that's awesome. Zane Paisley, what's your thoughts on our talk with Mr. Kash?
I thought it was excellent. That guy's got so many. He's been in so many different promotions and made an impact in each one of them. So we were very lucky to have the chance to interview him.
What do you think, Mr. Huckabee?
It was almost what I expected. I expected for him to drop some bombs, and he did. I didn't expect for him to call out as many people as he did, but he did that also, man. It was a great interview. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Well, has my respect. I've always thought of him as one of the most underrated wrestlers out there, and why promotions can't seem to get it right. And book the man properly and quit using him as enhancement type talent or people to keep, putting other talent over on him when he's got a ton of it still left in him. Just bewilders me to no end. So, best of luck to Kid Kash. I hope everything goes great for him and whatever he does next. All right, we've got about 20 minutes left in our show tonight. Let's kick it on over to talking about last night, I guess, with Raw. For those unaware, your beloved Prophet Rick Craig was at Bankers Life Fieldhouse in Indianapolis to watch Monday Night Raw live and in person. The bearded wonder himself, Zane Paisley, catches me within the first 2 minutes of the show from his lovely recliner at his house and sends me over a picture of myself taking a picture of whoever was coming down the aisle at the time, and it happened to be the Authority at that moment, Zane, with Triple H. So I guess, Zane, since Will didn't get to watch it, so Will, you can just kind of sit back for a minute and just listen, I guess, and chime in as you need to. But Zane, I have not watched it on television yet. Maybe we can kind of recap what you saw as opposed to what I saw.
Well, I'm not really sure exactly what you saw, but I did see you and your son Colin, so that was awesome. My oldest son was a little upset that I did not take him, and yeah, he had school this morning and all that stuff, so I decided not to go, and I told him that we would definitely have to go the next time they come around. Some of the fun things that I saw, our guest last week, Crazy Mary Dobson,
yes.
Who is turning into WWE's character actress. She was the concession stand manager bossing Kane around. That was a very silly skit going on the whole night long. Once again, I'm not a huge fan of people spraying other wrestlers with ketchup and mustard, so I just thought that was really silly. The whole Larry the Cable Guy, at least they tried to make it wrestling related a little bit. I was a little disappointed that the fans, including, I don't know if you were making a big deal about Santino, but it was the first time we'd seen Santino in a while. So I was a little disappointed in the reaction for him. But I was very, very, very happy about the reaction for Mizdow. I love the gimmick that Miz carries both of the tag team championship belts, and Mizdow gets to hold on to replica belts. I thought that was hilarious, and I love when Miz raises his arms with the belts, everybody boos, then Mizdow raises his arms with the fake belts, and everybody cheers.
Well, that's exactly what I wanted to get to with you, Zane. I wanted to make sure that wasn't getting beeped out or anything from the WWE, because that was clearly the case. The Miz was getting booed every time he rose his arms, and I didn't know if they cut to commercials by then or what was going on, but every time Mizdow, rose his arms, he was just getting cheered. I mean, Zane, the Undisputed Wrestling Show, Will Huckabee, Kevin as my witnesses, Rick Craig, the Prophet, was actually documented to be wrong. Mizdow is going to turn bigger than ever. You're right, Zane.
It's not the first time I've been right.
It's not the first time you've been right, but it's one of the first I've been wrong. So
okay, all right. I am very happy with success. If they had planned it out this way, I would be hugely surprised. I think it's just an organic thing. I saw on a website called With Spandex, a writer named Brandon Stroud related this. We haven't had somebody to cheer like this since Daniel Bryan, and that was at WrestleMania that was really his big impact, where it's somebody that the WWE isn't forcing upon us. It is somebody that we want to cheer for and is making an impact, and hopefully they won't screw it up. Daniel Bryan got hurt, so they didn't really have too much of a chance to screw it up after he won the championship. But the last time I really remember an upswelling of support like we are seeing for Mizdow was for Zack Ryder. So I am very hopeful that they don't screw it up, book him in bad situations. I hope they let him flourish because he is making an impact. he's been around in the WWE developmental system for 10 years, and he's getting a chance. So I really hope the best for him.
Can I say something?
Well, go ahead, Will, please.
I was about to say talking about Mizdow. I was watching Survivor Series on the WWE Network. I finally caved in and got it. With my buddy Joe Black and stuff. And when Mizdow came out for the tag team match, he was so against. I explained the dynamic of the Miz and Damien Sandow and stuff, and he was so against the idea of Damien Sandow being a stunt double for the Miz until about halfway through the match, when the Miz was in the match, and he started realizing that Damien Sandow was on the floor mimicking everything that the Miz was doing. And in the span of 30 seconds, he went from hating that gimmick to completely loving it. It was one of his favorite parts of the entire pay-per-view. And I think that that's the appeal of Damien Sandow, is that, people hated it at first, but he's such a great character actor. And I hate to use that term because he's an accomplished wrestler also, but he's such a great...
He's more than just a wrestler. He's obviously, he can give other dimensions to things. So you know what?
Exactly.
Okay, maybe his uppity genius type character is gone. Who cares? He's proving to us that he's got more depth than just that. And Zane,
the last time,
getting back to
I was about to say
what you were saying, Zane. You know what? We're not even talking about Daniel Bryan's return.
Yeah.
I don't know how much of a pop that got on television, but the place was roaring when he came out.
It was until he talked for 30 minutes, and after we already had Triple H and Steph talk for 20 minutes before that, we didn't really get any action until 30, 45 minutes.
First half hour was nothing but talk. You're right.
Yeah. And I do want to call out Killer Kev because he and I had a Facebook conversation the other day where I said, I didn't really think the Sting thing was that big of a deal. They should have had Daniel Bryan come out in his place. And Kev said, Daniel Bryan can't even lift his arms up. Well, he looked like he was lifting his arms up fairly well yesterday. I think he'd be great for a permanent GM type thing. But they can't put him in situations where he's talking for half an hour. It's not his character. It's not good for him.
Yeah, but I'm going to jump in real quick on this, but at the same time, he's still hurt. He can't go in there and take out Triple H because he's injured.
He can do a Scorpion Death Drop on Triple H.
No.
He can. His neck is still in pretty precarious situation still, from my understanding. All right, before we got to get to another segment here real quick, but I want to talk very quickly about your thoughts on Concessions Kane. Zane, how did that go over on television?
I want to hear about your interaction with Concessions Kane.
Well, it was interesting because I took a break to go get my son Sprite, and I flat out walked out my entrance straight into Concessions Kane's area. I said, "Oh!" And I no sooner just turned right, and there he was. So I kind of got caught off guard very quickly from Concessions Kane, but I got brushed off and back. I mean, the crowd was starting to gather pretty quickly anyway, but I got brushed off, was getting ready to take a picture. The guy very politely says, "I'm sorry, sir, you can't take pictures of this." Of course, I go about 20 more feet down and take a picture anyway. But I thought it was fun. I could do completely without Larry Cable Guy and Santino. They really didn't do anything for me yesterday. It wasn't funny. It didn't go over at all with the audience, but Concessions Kane, those facial expressions he had when he was talking to Crazy Mary was just priceless. I was laughing in my seat, so I thought that was pretty good. Zane?
Well, yeah, I'm going to talk about this a little bit later on, but I don't like how they're turning the Monster Kane into just a goofball. He's been around forever. I don't think that there's a way that they can now rehabilitate his career to be another monster again. But at least they're not treating him like Mark Henry. Who did Mark Henry piss off to be the first eliminated at Survivor Series and then do a 30-second squash match where he was the jobber last night.
Now, we'll talk about that. Doesn't even count getting crushed by Rusev, too.
Yeah, what has happened to Mark Henry? It's really sad because I like Mark Henry as a performer, and I think he's one of the underutilized guys for size, strength, and acting ability.
The only thing I can think of is maybe he's legitimately getting ready to retire soon. I know that rumor has been shifting through with all the injuries that Mark's had over the last few years. And if that be the way, then that's his way of helping get guys over. I don't know. Kane, I think he's just transitioning to a new role, Zane. I don't think the monster Kane is ever going to come back in the way it used to be. I mean, he's in his mid-40s now. Time and reality is getting the best of him, too. He's probably wanting to slow things down a little bit, too. Maybe get himself a real back office or agent job with the company. Who knows? But, he's showing his depth as well, just like Sandal's doing. You know what? Give him something to do it, and he does it. What did you think coming across? And then we'll get to some awards here right after this one. Big Show once again turning heel.
I like how he was asking the audience to give him, forgive him for making one mistake when he's turned heel and faced 25 times. I don't think he is a heel that does cool things that make us want to cheer for him, like so many, pseudo heels have been in the past. I think he legitimately wants the audience to hate him, so I applaud him for that. I just don't know. I think I predicted this before Survivor Series started. Why would you have him on your team if you know that he's flip-flopped so many times? Mm-hmm. So I liked his promo last night. I liked Eric Rowan coming out to get in his face, and I like the direction that they're sending Eric Rowan in. I just hope that Big Show can keep up making us want to hate him, and they don't try to revert him back to an in-between guy anymore.
Which makes me sad, Zane, because the Big Show. Why am I echoing?
We don't hear it.
Okay, I do. Anyway, the Big Show flip-flopping back and forth. And it's not his fault because the Big Show's doing exactly what the company tells him to do. People keep crapping all over the Big Show, and I don't think it's, my opinion, it's not the Big Show's fault. I think he does what the company wants him to do. He goes out there and cuts a compelling promo. He cries and does whatever, make it look as real as he can make it look. I'd love to have a company man like the Big Show who'll just do whatever you ask the man to do. But it is nonsense seeing him get flip-flopped so many times that you're right, Zane. If I were a wrestler and wanted a teammate, he's the last one I would want on my team. All right, let's wrap up tonight's show. We've got Mr. Zane Paisley. Make the introduction for yourself, sir.
Well, I was asked to, for part of our Thanksgiving and holiday celebration, to come up with some turkey awards. Now, these are not the Gobbledygooker Awards, which our friends over at WrestleCrap do. This is something completely different than what our friends at Thursday AMP do, which is the Golden Turducken Awards. This is something complete. These are the Undisputed Wrestling Show Turkey Awards. So, my first award, I'm going to give the Match of the Year. Yes, you heard that, the Match of the Year. If anybody has a chance to go to Will Huckabee's Facebook page, Will, can you tell everybody your Facebook page?
Just William Huckabee.
I posted a match from PWG earlier this year. It's Joey Ryan versus one of my favorites, Drake Younger, in a hard candy Lego death match. That is my match of the year.
Gosh.
It is fantastic if you get a chance to watch it. It's only 3.5 seconds long, or 3.5 minutes long, but it's one of my favorites. All right, my award for worst recycled angle. Does the name Megan Miller ring a bell to anybody?
Megan Miller?
No.
Well, that's good. That was the recycled Claire Lynch storyline that WWE decided to do with Daniel Bryan's physical therapist that he was supposedly having an affair with. That was that young lady's name. If you've forgotten it, I applaud you. I cannot forget that. It was awful. Worst use of a dummy. Dean Ambrose beats up a Seth Rollins dummy. The whole Dean Ambrose trickster thing does not work for me. He should be a crazy person that takes on the world. He shouldn't be playing for jokes.
Hey, Zane.
Yes, sir.
Shockingly, the Dean Ambrose-Luke Harper match had some boring chants.
It was a long match. Those guys are great on the mic. They're great in the ring, but the pacing of that match was not great.
Do continue.
My award for worst use of a celebrity. I actually have a tie on this, so I've got two honorable mentions. Flo Rida beats up Heath Slater. I did not like that they revisited that storyline. I don't think that celebrity guest should beat up the active roster. And the tie with Hoda Kotb and Kathy Lee Gifford on Raw. That was 10 minutes of my life that I will never get back, much like this segment. Sending it over to TNA, the worst stalker. Samuel Shaw stalking Christy Hemme storyline was awful. It was a waste of our time. I can't believe I'm talking about it right now. Worst makeover. It's kind of a tie right now. It's Corporate Kane and Concession Kane. Yeah, as I said, he should be a monster, and it's just he's put into matches to be squashed, and it's so boring. Worst promoter award goes to that guy who faked a heart attack and left wrestlers stranded in Canada. If you guys aren't familiar with that, listen to our show with Congo Kong.
That's right.
I'm glad I got a pop for that.
We remember, don't we, Will?
Of course, remember that story.
I'm glad that something out of this segment got a reaction. Worst geography. Hulk Hogan thinking that the Toronto Sky Dome is in New Orleans.
No, that's worth memory.
Worst social media stunt. #AskDixie. Okay, if you want a hashtag, go to #Beards and Zubaz. That's the next big thing. But if you want to revisit, go to #AskDixie because TNA opened themselves up to some craziness there.
I can imagine.
How big is Batista's dick?
Well, that's funny that you mentioned Blutista. The worst of the worst for this year, the big golden turkey, whatever you want to call it, Batista winning the Royal Rumble. Was there a worse thing this year? I dare you to tell me that there was something worse than that.
I can't. That was bad.
So there you go. Those there are the worst of the worst from the Undisputed Wrestling show for this year.
All right, we need to wrap up the show real quick. Zane, you wanted to do another quick segment with us, and then we need to call it quits for the evening.
Well, with Thanksgiving coming up this coming Thursday, and if you guys are listening to this after Thanksgiving, I hope you ate lots of turkey and drank lots of wild turkey. This year, I am thankful that we have such programming as NXT. It's a great show to see some of our favorites from around the world learning the WWE style. On the converse of that, I'm thankful that we have a new program, Lucha Underground, which is giving us an alternative to the WWE style in a compelling fashion. I'm thankful for larger independent federations like Pro Wrestling Guerrilla out of California, that we get to see some of our favorites in some of our independent dream matches. I'm very thankful that there is independent wrestling around the United States and the world, that we can see some performers learn their craft, get behind them before they make it to the big time. And I'm thankful for my friends that are in the wrestling business or appreciate the wrestling business. Guys like Kyle Winchester, Kyle DeWeese, Rich Abbott, Drew Skills, Troy Miller, Congo Kong. Those guys make it so much fun to go to these shows and to do what we're doing week in and week out. And I'm thankful that I'm part of the Undisputed Wrestling Show on AngryMarks.com because we have so much fun talking about pro wrestling 52 weeks a year.
Well, 51 this year. Okay, Will Huckabee, what are you thankful for?
First of all, I'm thankful for having such a supportive wife and family who allows me and supports me while I'm on the road every weekend, going God knows where, God knows what part of the state. I'm thankful for my wrestling road trip buddies, Joe Black and Sean Adams, who's in Wisconsin right now for the next 4 months. The other guys who I've been fortunate enough to travel the highways and byways with, like Lance Erickson and Bo Crockett, guys like Blake Broadway, guys like that, Jason Kincaid. I'm thankful for the promoters, namely Vinnie Vane, Tracy Anderson, her husband Rick Anderson, and Vax for being very supportive of me and giving me an opportunity to be the head champion, the main champion for their respective companies, and having the faith that I would represent them well. And last but not least, like Zane, I am thankful for being a part of this show. Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Zane. Thank you, Kevin, for having faith in the kid from North Carolina who only had a dream of being a professional wrestler, and making me believe in myself and understanding that people every once in a while actually want to listen to what I have to say. So I'm thankful for all those things this year.
Nicely done, Will and Zane. Okay, the Prophet is thankful for the WWE Network. As much of a pain in the butt it has been to get launched and making us wait for delay after delay, in my opinion, it's been worth every penny that we've had put into it, seeing all the archive matches, seeing the old WCW programming and the wars with the WWF, old ECW, every pay-per-view just about known to existence, all in the tip of your fingertips. I mean, just like that is just phenomenal. I never thought in my lifetime I'd ever see something like that happen. As Zane said, I think independent wrestling, it's still alive, it's still well. We've got guys like William Huckabee who's out there busting his hind end every single weekend. Support your local indie wrestling if you don't. You see some of the best matches and best talent. And I'll put it out here, my son Colin and I went to Raw last night. Zane, this is the second Raw that Colin has gone with me. He gave bigger pop to the small White River Wrestling than he did for any of the WWE shows. So that shows you that that stuff's still alive and well.
That's a good kid. Support indie wrestling.
Yep. Speaking of support, I want to thank the Morning Star Will Huckabee, who's been an absolute godsend to our show. We interviewed him middle of last year, I believe, and enjoyed talking to him so much. You know, out of nowhere, I just shot something out on Q-Ball Carmichael's group that he has, and Will Huckabee responded in a very polite manner that he'd love to be interviewed. We interviewed the man, and now look at him. He's just rocking and rolling every week with us, and we enjoy you so much, Will, and the insight you bring as a professional wrestler to the business, and just bringing more knowledge to the show. That's what it's all about. And of course, my right arm, Zane Paisley, who's been with me for a long time here running the show now, taking Pro Wrestling Obsession and keeping it alive and well, helping with the Undisputed Wrestling Show, going on the road with me to Fort Wayne on a couple occasions now, and just keeping this thing alive. You know, something I didn't dream in a million years I'd be doing. I'm doing it with my buddies. So that's a cool thing, and they both stick with me even when I have douchebag moments. So thank you to you guys for that. The Undisputed Wrestling Show itself, I'm thankful that we have the platform that we can come out every week and talk about professional wrestling. The support from Stevie J with Angry Marks, we've had a few different homes for the show, and we are now home. and it feels good to be home. Kevin Fields, Killer Kev, has done an amazing job with production for us. He's been there. He's supported us since day number one. I wouldn't want to be with anybody else but Kevin, so thank you, Kevin. And last and not least, before we wrap the show up, I want to thank, and I am thankful for, Ricky Curon for just being a guy who is a thorn in Will's ass. That alone is worth the price of admission. So thank you, Ricky Curon, for annoying the hell out of William Huckabee, and it's worth it to me. So thank you for listening, as you always do. Thank you to everybody out there who does listen to our show. Be safe this weekend. Enjoy the turkey. Enjoy the football. Enjoy whatever wrestling event you got going on. Like I said, just be safe. And we'll see you next week. Well, we won't see you, but we'll talk to you next week. Kurgan will be joining us in hour number 1. And in hour number 2, we've got Marion Fontaine.
Yeah.
Definite interesting conversation with Mr. Fontaine. On behalf of everyone here at the Undisputed Wrestling Show, I am your prophet, Rick Craig. Have a great one. We'll talk soon.